So thank you, Yangai, and thank you, Uncle Rod. And I would also like to acknowledge that we meet on the lands of the Kaurna people, and I'd like to pay my respects to Kaurna elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge other First Nations people in the room and online today. So, let's see if I can drive this thing. So some of you may have walked here down North Terrace and seen a sign really at the top of East Terrace where the fringe was, and it's a sign up on a very high pole, about an A3 paper size. And once you can get there and read it up close, it says, "Danger, aggressive swooping birds." And then it says what you should do in slightly smaller print, and it lists a number of things. It says 1, avoid this location. 2, wear a helmet. 3, wear a scarf. 4, do not throw anything at the birds or they will swoop more aggressively. And I sort of feel by the time you're there under that sign, it's kind of all options are off really. And I think that was sort of how last year was for a lot of us. We were there. You know, suddenly it was we can't get the Chinese students back, it was the bushfires, and suddenly we can't get any of the international students back, and it's still more bushfires. And then we've got floods now. It's just been a year of catastrophes, you know. So we've just had to roll with the punches, and all of us, I think, have had to have that experience. So we're here. So what next? So, of course, we've got a case for change, and some of that was really accelerated last year. So if we look at the traditional University of Adelaide student, that student was a school leaver, 17 or 18 years old, probably had done a gap year. That didn't happen this year, of course. But our student demographic now includes adult and lifelong learners who may have family and work demands. And this year in particular, we have many mature age students whose work and travel lives have even been more dramatically impacted than those of the school leavers. So these students often bring lots of life experience with them, but require more flexibility and may need more support in areas like our technology. But even our school leavers engage with learning differently. Well, one of my colleagues wrote to me today demanding to go back to giving 4-hour weekly lectures, and I mean a stand-up God Professor lecture. That's not a model that fits with our idea of more collaborative teaching and learning, in which the university student takes a more active part in the partnership. And of course, we're in a world, we all are, in an increasingly digitised and borderless world, and we just have to acknowledge that. A survey of 352 scientists by Oxford University's Future of Humanities Institute asked how many years it would take before machines outperform humans on various tasks within their specialist fields. And the collective response was a bit scary. Full automation of labour might take 120 years, but surgeons could be replaced in 25 to 50. Also on my slide there, I've actually put cost down at the bottom, and I'm not going to talk today about the cost of education, but suffice to say that at the university we're not fans of the new Jobs Ready graduate package, which makes an arts, business, law or economics degree now more expensive than a medical one and out of reach for a lot of Australian students. The bottom line is that a university education costs, it costs a lot, and many cannot afford it. So we need to prepare the students who do get to us for a world in which they need to be flexible. They may be holding down 1 or 2 or more jobs while they're studying to pay for that HECS debt and those fees, and they may then need to manage 4 or 5 careers once they do finish with us. So that means we're focusing more and more on our graduate attributes and how we can and if we can teach these generic skills. So those are skills such as creativity, critical thinking, curiosity, empathy, and the ability to think outside the box. And we're also making sure students have the technical skills that they need in their fields. None of this is at the expense of content, but it does mean we've looked hard at the ways in which we teach and the ways in which our students learn. And in some cases, we've ditched formal lectures altogether. In other cases, we've added new aspects, such as internships or other work-integrated learning experiences. And in others, we've turned to industry and professional partners through our program advisory boards to help us rethink and redesign what we offer our students. So how do we meet everyone's needs? The short answer is that in reality we meet some, most I hope, and compromise on others, but the process of getting there is really important. We've done a lot of listening and consulting, listening to current and prospective students, listening to school principals, listening to school career advisors, listening to school heads of academic studies and learning and teaching. We've listened to parents, including those on our university staff. Many of us have a vested interest in getting this right. And we've listened to employers, the various accrediting bodies and our professional organisations. And we continue to listen, whether that's formally through our industry and engagement priority boards and meetings with state and federal government ministers and department heads, or more informally through meetings with like-minded colleagues in our schools, meetings with employers and meetings with students. On that note, my staff meet every fortnight with a group of students, and we have pop-up boards in the student hubs for informal comment and feedback. But we've also changed the constitution of many of our program review boards and official committees to ensure that at least one student is involved in those discussions and plays a formal voting role. More specifically, we're rethinking how we recruit and admit students, and in 2020 in particular, we had a crash test, like you did, of all of our teaching and learning and student support services. As for the latter, I'll come back, I have to say that they're pretty robust, but I'll come back to some of that later. One of our key concerns, and one I know from conversations with many of you that we share, is enabling access to university and successful progression once a student is with us. That's driven us to design and support a number of initiatives. I'm just going to mention a few. It's one that's very close to my heart. My other role, I have two full-time concurrent roles at the moment. The other one is the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Arts. And under that, we have our Elder Conservatorium's Open Music Academy. And that provides access to students across South Australia to high-quality one-to-one and group music tuition. So OAM has been running now for 4 years, and our enrolments went up during COVID. Perversely, we started 2020 with 195 students engaged in weekly one-to-one lessons. That's risen now to 265. In addition, and despite COVID, we managed through our OMA regional tours, which are funded in part by the state government, to reach over 300 students on Kangaroo Island, very important because they are recovering from the bushfires, and we gave professional development opportunities to 33 staff in schools there. And then on our Eyre Peninsula tour, we reached over 1,000 students and many more staff teaching in a whole variety of schools there. So that was all during term 4 last year, once regional travel was safe. In the regions through OMA, we enhance what is going on in schools, not compete, providing bursaries to allow students disadvantaged by geography and or by economic status to have access to great teaching and great teachers in addition to the expertise they have locally. So Open Music Academy is one of our recent great success stories, and we've already seen, I think it was 30 at the beginning of 2020, so I don't know the numbers now, but 30 of the graduates from OMA come into programs at the university, some in music, some into other areas like psychology. On another point, our STEM Academy workshops and events for students in years 8 to 12 are delivered in schools and online and caters for students who are passionate about science, technology, engineering and maths. And this year we also hosted the National Youth Science Forum, and that's a program for young people, mostly just finished year 12, that combines a series of live digital events, experiments and lectures. This was held in January, February, excuse me. So NYSF students met over 180 STEM professionals, attended 57 in-person STEM visits over 3 days at local hubs, and attended over 60 digital events, including lectures, workshops, debates, career expos, experiments, and social activities. Now, usually this is held in Canberra, and all the students go there, but COVID stopped that, and we really jumped to host it at the University of Adelaide, and we're hoping to host it again next year. Our Head Start program is familiar to many of you, and that goes from strength to strength. It now includes a wide range of our first-year subjects. The model pre-2020 was that students had to come onto campus and attend lectures and tutorials. Well, all that changed last year, as you know. So what we're trying to look at now is ways to expand Head Start in terms of access. It's really only been possible for students who can have an easy commute to our university campuses, whether it's Waite or Roseworthy or North Terrace. But we think now that we've actually managed to move a lot of those lectures online and students still did well in the Head Start program, school students, that we really should have ways to roll this out to regional areas of the state. So that's one of our big projects now. I'm going to come back to Year 12 subject-based entry shortly, as this is part of a national trend. But last year I was on a national working party set up by the then Chief Scientist Alan Finkel to try to encourage students from Year 8 up to make what we called informed choices about their school subjects. In the end, we decided this was not about recommending that every student do maths for as long as possible or, that they should stick with as much maths or as high-level maths as they could for as long as they could manage, nor was it about defining a short list of essential subjects, as we all had a long and varied list of all those. But it was a message about trying to make sure students didn't limit their academic options too soon and therefore restrict their ability to consider pathways of university study that really do need some experience and skill, whether in maths or English or music or biology. None of us wants to see students get in on ATAR and then crash and burn because the transition to university, for reasons academic or otherwise, is just too great a shock. So, on the academic side, once students are with us, we try to make that experience unique. And 2 Vice-Chancellors ago, 2, 3, actually we've had some interims, so I've probably miscalculated, maybe 3 or 4, Alice, you'll tell me. Several Vice-Chancellors ago, under Warren Bevington, we focused on the small group discovery experience, and elements of that remain in many of our courses. Then, like many others, we flipped our classrooms, but ironically, many of our flipped classrooms turned into pre-recorded lecture experiences in 2020 through COVID. Although many of our staff at the University of Adelaide actually opted to give live interactive lectures in real time, and that worked really well. So we're in the process this year of transitioning much of that experience, not all of it yet, but much of it back to face-to-face. But our teaching has definitely shifted focus over the last decade to being student-focused and in fact student-centric. And where we have excelled is in forming and retaining internships and work-integrated learning experiences for our students. Even last year, we had close to 5,000 internships and placements take place across the university community. And even last year, most of our placements occurred and 60% of our elective internships went ahead, some still face-to-face, many of them online. And while study abroad and overseas study tours didn't happen, ironically we got lots of funding from the federal government for study tours that just couldn't happen, that's the way it is. They didn't happen in 2020, but we did have virtual study tours, and while that might seem really odd, I actually did a virtual study tour of London. It was fantastic. So you can make things work and still give students an international experience, and I think fire them up for thinking, well, when I can travel, that's somewhere I want to go. And many of our students now graduate with the Adelaide Graduate Award, which recognises leadership and participation outside the academic curriculum. And under our new Vice-Chancellor, Peter Hoy, AC, and I'm hoping you'll get a chance to meet Peter soon if you haven't already, it looks like most aspects of our future-making strategy will stay, although that strategy was predicated on rapid growth through vastly increased international student numbers and research dollars. The former, as you know, is not happening, although we are only down about 10% on our international student enrolments on last year, because everywhere around the world's recognised online learning, we've got lots of new international students who've elected to start online with us, obviously crossing fingers and hoping they'll get here sometime soon. And of course, as you know, the entire sector is over-enrolled with our local domestic students who can't work and can't travel. So our income from research and philanthropy, however, was at record highs in 2020. So there is scope for optimism. I'm still optimistic about getting the international students back too, but we'll see. Under the education pillar, I'm not going to go through this, there's a lot on this slide, but we have a lot of ambitious goals. I'm just going to pick out a few. So they include expanded access to a variety of learners, regional, Indigenous, postgrad and online, international, onshore and offshore, and professional learners in short courses and micro-credentials. We're also developing new entry and exit pathways with real career and industry connections, more online and blended delivery, and that certainly was accelerated by 2020, and more modular and micro-credential content to suit part-time and self-paced study. But enriching the student experience is at the heart of what we do. So that included in 2019 beefing up academic, pastoral, social and mental health support, and boy, we really needed all of that in 2020. And we've just increased the funding for those areas of support in 2021 as there's ongoing need. COVID. Now, I could talk all day about what we did as part of our response to the bushfires, then to the international students stuck in China, then to COVID. And by this time last year, in fact, it was really just over a year ago, we realised this was going to be a major impact. Again, if you'd told me this time last year that by this time now we would have only had a handful of international students back and they were all final year medical students, I think I would have packed my bags and walked away. But we've stuck with it. So we didn't know what the future would hold then, and what we did, of course, what you did, of course, was highly reactive. We just had to be. Okay, so we massively increased our online student support, and that was available by Zoom and by phone. We massively increased and kept our counselling services, that's a 24-hour service, and we increased our career services. We have a career service for students in China that's actually been really popular this year. And we commenced our Year 11 Early Offer Scheme, which mimics schemes already in place at a number of places, including UWA and ANU. On the basis of Year 11 results in SACE or equivalent qualifications offered in approved SA and some regional schools, including just over the borders in New South Wales and Victoria, we made over 2,000 early entry offers. Of those, 75% ended up also making the ATAR entry requirements for their chosen programs. Census was just yesterday, so I'm not sure how many of the remaining 25% elected to enrol and to stay with us to census, but we are supporting that cohort very actively and will monitor their semester one results to see if they are a group who need greater assistance, or as if we suspect with a number of them just last year was a terrible year. If you were an Indigenous student sitting in a regional school in Victoria, it was a terrible year for Year 12s. The Year 11 entry scheme has continued in a modified form for 2022 entry. Ours was a COVID response, but it is following a trend in the sector, and as you know, Flinders followed just a month or so behind us in this state. So we are exploring what this scheme might look like beyond this year, beyond 2022 entry. While it's not a scheme that suits everyone, it does provide an important access pathway, especially for regional and disadvantaged students, and it provides a pathway to one of the world's best universities. Breaking down that barrier is actually really important to us. It's important to the state. Our teaching changed in 2020, as it did for all of you, as we pivoted online and stayed online, and that was easier for some courses than for others. So COVID-19 meant that, for instance, access to the winery for students in our course winemaking at Vintage was not an option. And we had those students stuck in China and Victoria as well as locally, all online. So the students worked online in small groups, 4 or 5, on a project to produce a red wine from grapes to bottle. And the critical winemaking processes, such as delivery of the grapes to the winery, crushing, pressing, pumping and transfers, were live streamed from the winery. There was real-time delivery of fermentation data to groups and virtual small group consultancies. Virtual tasting classes involved all wine samples being delivered individually to the students. And to guess, they actually got the wine delivered in little test tubes. That was 1,200 samples across 80 students, and we delivered to China. Ironically, with the wine bans now, we can't do that course in China. But last year we could. Anyway, all tasting classes were then delivered via Zoom, including the use of polling and chat features. I just think that was an amazing, amazing feat, and I'm not surprised that actually one of the people doing that program won a National Teaching Award for her long, outstanding teaching career. But it was really, I think, good thinking outside the box. Because, again, we have lots of experts stuck doing nothing, they managed to get several presentations from industry wine experts to hear all about Pinot Noir, Grenache and Shiraz. So we had this actually happen in lots of areas where we had famous conductors, famous winemakers, not able to do their job, really happy to talk to a class of students, even if it was 2 a.m. their time overseas. So it actually was really successful. And just speaking of music, at the Elder Con, Associate Professor Liz Koch, who again has won university-wide and national teaching awards, curated what she called From Isolation to Inspiration. She'd spent years organising a international flute residency, which was going to happen up at Eukarya in the hills, flute players flying in from all over the world. Of course they just couldn't happen. So what she did was she collected the contributions from wonderful musicians in Australia, Hong Kong, Paris, Texas, London, Vienna, Amsterdam and Auckland about flute playing. And many of these were little video blogs and the rest of it. And she put it together as a curated piece of work. It's actually turned into a book. But these were then presented to all the participants, all the students who would have taken part in those. And it's a real shame. There were some high school students involved in that, some really talented music students in Year 11 and 12, but we just had to make do. We had to provide particular support for our international students. And we have a number of programs. I'll just outline a couple. One is called our English Assist program, and that was developed by TESOL experts from the English Language Centre and comprised 2 activities, a 6-week online speaking and listening skills workshop series and a discipline-based English language program that was paired with core courses. And again, we had very large numbers of international students taking those courses. We have thousands of international students stuck overseas, as do most of the larger research-intensive universities, Flinders and UniSA too in this state. The International Peer Study Support Program launched in semester 2, and that saw high engagement with around 417 of 1,100 commencing international students engaged with the program, with 50% of those participants being stuck offshore. So that, again, provided peer-to-peer academic support. And our International Student Summer Program commenced late in 2020, occurred over November and finished in February, with a series of activities to engage international students over the summer. And that was for those stuck here on shore too, because again, students couldn't go home. If they go home, as DFAT says, you can go home, you can't get back. So we had a lot of students who are here without their families, without partners, without their kids. It's been very, very tricky. So the in-person events were reconfigured into an online format during our little bit of closed down in November, but then back to face-to-face and online. And the program sought to contribute to international student retention by offering a series of social and employability activities. So we had over 1,100 student attendances from 500 individual students, and a further 185 students offshore participated online. So we also had 200 international students start the university's new summer business consultancy project, in which we team up international students to complete a project for an SME or a startup or a non-profit organisation over a period of 4 weeks. So we're working with on 28 projects with 25 separate businesses to do that, and there are social activities wound into that as well. So, what will stick? I think you're all wondering in schools, what will stick post-pandemic? So, what will stick are the things that worked, I think. The student support, our mental, social, academic support was fantastic. Our academic results also rose, and I know, speaking to the heads of the residential colleges, that was the pattern across the universities. So I think students had fewer distractions, especially in areas, and for us, your term one, our sort of semester one, where students really were mostly at home. So fewer distractions, they got more engaged, so we had a 10% increase in distinctions and high distinctions. So that was great. Was not quite so pronounced at the end of the year, but it was still, the results were up, which was fantastic. Challenges, there are so many. So we're returning to face-to-face, but we still have thousands of students overseas. So we're trying to get the balance right about what we can do face-to-face, what we still have to record. We're investing in new teaching spaces where we can do both at the same time. It is really tricky at the moment. And we're putting a huge effort into student retention and making sure that those students succeed in their individual programs and their faculties. And that's academic support, it's peer mentoring support, but it's also social events. Especially now, we've got lots of things we can do face-to-face, but we're also continuing online social events for students who cannot be here. So we monitor students, we call every student, we do wellbeing checks, we provide lots and lots of social activities. In fact, we've just put more financial support into social activities on face-to-face and online. We put lots of support into our Maths Learning Centre, our Writing Centre, into our PASS program, and into Wilto Yellow, which provides support for our Indigenous students. Academic integrity was a huge issue for the sector. I won't go into that. We're still trying to deal with that. It's a huge task to monitor it, detect it. We're looking at invigilated exams for this year. We had non-invigilated last year, but also we're looking to move back to face-to-face for exams as far as we can, with online options for those students who really can't do face-to-face. And as I mentioned, we're looking at the future of the Year 11 entry scheme beyond its primary role, which was really as a mental health stress release for Year 12 students and their parents and teachers during COVID. So we're looking at what it might look like beyond COVID. So you all know the SA situation. Families are stretched financially. Our population's not growing, but neither are jobs in the state. However, as I mentioned earlier, in times of hardship, universities usually do well. We usually see a jump in enrolments due to lack of other options, and this year has followed that pattern. So that does mean we are very focused not only on retention of those students for whom university is very likely, for many of them, a third option, given they can't travel and they can't work, but we're very focused on who comes to us and how they come to us, how they get here. We want students to be prepared, we want them to succeed. So this is our 2021 conundrum, and I know we're talking about ATAR Plus later today. I talk about ATAR alternatives. From the university perspective, we need to look not just at ATAR entry, but at other skills and indicators of success of our incoming students. And those options are out there, as you know. Again, from our perspective, universities want students to choose subjects and areas of study based on their personal passions, their personal talents and their potential. We want them to be taking subjects in your schools without fear of the impact on ATAR, whether that's specialist maths or a language. We want them to take things that they want to do, but that will set them up for what they want to do after. So the ATAR, as we know, is a great measure and it's a terrible measure. The Victorian Premier announced last year that the 2020 Victorian ATAR was meaningless, and in New South Wales and Queensland, students got bonus points for bushfires and for COVID. So I don't know where that leaves us, but it's tricky because we take students from around Australia. All that's probably accelerated the discussions of ATAR alternatives or ATAR Plus, and that's a good discussion to have. The ATAR is not disappearing tomorrow. I think we all know that. It's here to stay, especially for competitive capped programs. But it does mean that subject-based entry schemes are gaining popularity in the sector, and in fact ours started pre-COVID in 2018 in partnership with a number of you for entry into engineering-related degrees. That was our first go at this. Students who achieved acceptable standards in specialist maths and physics were offered a place in some of our engineering and maths degrees back in 2018. And that laid the foundation for the wider Year 11 early offer scheme that we offered last year and are offering this year. And now we're looking at ways in which we can recognise IB subjects. We already do this on a case-by-case basis, but we're wondering about something we can apply more generically. And we're very interested to see what happens with the move to learner profiles. So my take-home message would be that we are flexible and we have to be flexible. 2020 showed us that nothing can be taken and granted and nothing is set in stone. I'm always open to great ideas, especially out-of-the-box ideas, so please contact me if you have one of those. This really is an ongoing dialogue. We are part of that process with you. So thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kahlia Green and I am the team leader in the Schools Division for the Domestic Recruitment team, and I've got the joy of presenting you with our university updates today. So a couple of things before I begin. We have given you a copy of this presentation on arrival, so please don't feel like you have to furiously scribble down notes during this. Also, I absolutely could not have put this presentation today without the help of colleagues from across the university. So at the conclusion of the presentation, I have a number of my colleagues in the back of the room which I'll introduce you to, as well as the entire domestic recruitment team. So what we're going to ask that you do when we finish up with the university updates is to all jump up out of our seats and head back over there for some networking and for some questions, and so that the National Wine Centre can reset the tables for our lunch service. Please do remember where you were sitting. Obviously, we'd love you to sit back in your same seat for COVID reasons. I am aware that I am the only thing standing between you and your second coffee, and as we know, nobody likes to be held in at recess, so we'll try and get through this as quickly as we can. If I can work this thing. There we go. Okay, so we're pleased that once again in 2021 we've been recognised as South Australia's #1 university according to the 3 major university ranking systems which you would all be very familiar with in your roles. We're really pleased about this because it means that we can continue to offer a world-class educational experience right here in Adelaide for your students. As you would have heard from Professor Shaw this morning, the alternative entry pathway based on Year 11 results has been extended into 2021 to include this year's cohort of Year 12s. This will once again be available for schools across South Australia and also border Victoria and New South Wales schools. And in 2021, this will expand to include our colleagues in the Northern Territory as well. There are some revised entry pieces already on the website that you can see on your screen there. I know many of you are anxious to know about how the scheme will be administered this year. Please rest assured we have taken on your feedback from last year. We're just in the finalising stages of putting this together for you, and we hope to share full communication with you about how that will work in early term 2, so please keep an eye out for that. Okay, on to some updates from my colleagues, and once again, thank you to them for providing me with this information today. For those of you who aren't already aware, our Wilta Yalu team provides pathway services and support to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students across the country. The Gungandee Indigenous Education Program has run for a number of years now and does offer support for students in years 10, 11 and 12. I will introduce all my colleagues today, but I did want to call out here in particular that we're very, very pleased to be joined by the Acting Director of Wultiyalu, Louise Mitchell, today. So please take the opportunity to speak to Louise if you haven't met her before during the morning tea break. Wultiyalu do some fantastic things for Indigenous students, so hopefully she can share some more with you about that. Okay, on to our Faculty of Arts. The faculty has a couple of new programs. There we are. The faculty has a couple of new programs. Some of these are brand new in 2021 and some of them are just recent in the last couple of years. So firstly, the Bachelor of Arts Advanced with the double degree of a Bachelor of Law is designed for students who want to pursue the opportunities available in the advanced degree but don't want to compromise their double degree options. There's also the double degree of the Bachelor of Criminology with the Bachelor of Laws, which taps into a real interest that we're finding students have when they want to embark on a career in the law. They would like to, have that criminology side to their bow as well. We're very pleased that we still have the fastest criminology law option in Australia, and this degree takes 4.5 years, as does the first one. In addition, the faculty is introducing this year the Higher Education Certificate in Digital Futures. This is designed for students who perhaps didn't get an offer into one of the other programs in the Faculty of Arts. There is no minimum ATAR required for this degree, although it is currently only available for 2021 intake. We will keep you updated on the status of that as it moves forward. Every year during this presentation, we like to remind you about the Master of Education because we know you spend a lot of time supporting your students, but we don't want you to forget about yourselves as well and the opportunities that we have available for you here as well. So the Master of Education through the Faculty of Arts is for school leaders, education consultants, teachers and professionals working in education. Some of you may have already been through something like this previously. At the University of Adelaide, we offer 6 specialisations. We have Educational Leadership and Innovation, Wellbeing, Entrepreneurship Education, STEM Education, English Language Teaching and Research. The Faculty of Arts has also quite recently announced the dates for their very popular high school workshops. These have been running for a number of years now and always sort of managed to fill up. So if that's something you're interested in, we'd encourage you to get in touch with us about that pretty soon to make sure that you secure your place for your students. There's a number of the popular events there that you see every year, but I did want to draw attention to one particular one on this list, which is new for the faculty this year, which will be their media evening, designed so that students and parents can attend the University of Adelaide. This will feature demonstrations, tours of our state-of-the-art media facilities and opportunities to interact with both academics and current students in media specialisations across the University of Adelaide. On to our Faculty of Engineering, Computer and Mathematical Sciences. So these guys have also got some new and emerging degrees and majors in 2021. So firstly, we're very excited about the Bachelor of Construction Management. I think I've spent a number of years in your schools hearing students say, do you have construction management? No, sorry, we don't have construction management. Are you interested in this instead? So we're very pleased to be able to offer something for those students that do have an interest in this area because we are finding that there is a lot of demand for graduates who have that experience that goes across engineering, but they can also then manage those kind of large-scale infrastructure projects. So this will be newly available from semester 2 in 2021. It'll draw on the faculty's existing strengths in teaching engineering, but it will tap into soaring demand both locally and internationally for graduates who can manage the construction of transformative infrastructure projects for the future. There's also an exciting addition to the popular chemical engineering degree, and this is one that is very popular amongst many of your students. From next year, they'll be offering a brand new major in food and beverage engineering. So when we talk about chemical engineering, really it's process engineering. It's the process of taking one thing, turning it into something else, and making that useful for a large amount of people. So this is something that obviously is readily applied to the food and beverage industry, and we already have a number of graduates in the chemical engineering degree who go on to work in food and beverage. So this is just really offering that opportunity for students to get in on it as soon as they begin university with us. So during this major, students will learn about food engineering, brewery engineering, winery engineering, and they'll also delve into chemical engineering plant design as well. While we are talking of majors, I'd love to just talk to you a little bit about the interdisciplinary majors available through the engineering streams at the University of Adelaide. Some of you might be aware that a couple of years ago we did change the way that we do engineering at the University of Adelaide, and we now encourage students to focus more on their major area of study as opposed to the specific degree that they're choosing. The new structure allows for lots of flexibility for students to move between different areas as they find new interests in their journey as a university student. Some of these interdisciplinary majors include renewable energy, smart technologies, medical technologies and defence systems, and you can see a key on the screen to let you know which degrees those are available in. This does give students the opportunity to specialise in an area that they're interested in, but also to meet industry demand in these areas. The list doesn't stop there. With engineering, there's a number of other majors available through the vast majority of programs in the engineering faculty. For a full list of the majors, we have listed the website on the screen for you there. I didn't want to go through them all for you today, but please do take the time to have a look at that. It can be a really useful resource when counselling students about which area to select when they're beginning in engineering. On to the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, and because of time I will spend the majority of my update on Health and Medical Sciences today talking to you about the changes to medicine. Many of you are probably already aware about the changes that are coming. It's something that we talked with you about around about this time last year before we all got sent into our homes, and obviously had to put a little bit of a delay on that process, but we're now feeling very confident and excited to roll out the new Adelaide Medical program to you. So before I go into the details, I just want to make you aware of the admissions guides. These have been recently released and hopefully you would have received communications from us about that. If not, my colleagues in the Health and Medical Sciences faculty have got some postcards up the back today with QR codes where you can get straight to the admissions guide. We produce these every year and there's a number of reasons for that. We know that there can be a lot of stress around medicine application and a lot of misconceptions when students talk to students from other schools or who might be looking at other universities. And we really want to empower students with the ability to own their own application process. We don't want them to be worrying about that thing that some kid from a different school said, or I heard that you have to do this to get into medicine. We put all of the information in that guide, it's all there for them so that they can really feel empowered beginning that process, knowing that all the information is available to them. And obviously a brilliant resource for you guys as well. So again, please don't feel the need to write all this down. Everything I'm going to tell you today is in these admissions guides. So from 2022, students studying medicine at Adelaide will begin what we're calling the Adelaide Medical Program. So the students here will graduate at an extended master's level. Sorry, I'm just going to move this. And what we're looking at here is a new 6-year medical program that will replace the existing Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery that you do know of. The structure here is 2 sequential degrees, which will lead to an extended master's level graduation. To progress to the Doctor of Medicine portion of the degree, students will need to successfully complete the Bachelor of Medical Studies with us. So while we are looking at now a more post-grad level of graduation, it is important to note there is no direct entry into the Doctor of Medicine. So the process for your students is going to look very similar to how it always has. It's simply that they're graduating at an extra level, so there isn't an opportunity for students to go and study a different bachelor's degree at a different university or with us and then jump in at that Doctor of Medicine point. It's very similar to the structure you might be familiar with our veterinary bioscience degree, where students need to begin and then finish that 6 years with us. While there is no entry, it is important to note there is actually an exit. So for students who might begin that particular degree and would prefer not to go on and become a doctor, who might have found a different passion within the medical field, they can graduate after 3 years with a bachelor's degree in the Bachelor of Medical Studies. So, the Bachelor of Medical Studies will draw on many existing strengths of the MBBS. All of the things that made that degree brilliant, such as clinical placements, regional opportunities, will remain in the degree. From there, we'll also be placing a bigger focus on research skills and moving away from case-based learning to scenario-based learning, so that students will graduate with an increased scope and enter the medical profession prepared for anything. This graphic here is just to give you an overview of the journey through the Adelaide Medical Program onto post-university training and registration checkpoints. You can find a copy of this in your admissions guide. So in terms of entry, you're probably looking at this thinking that it looks much the same as what you'd be familiar with in the MBBS, and it is. There's only a few very small changes which I'll cover with you today, and there are a couple of other things to note in the guide as well. So the prerequisites, as you know them, the minimum eligibility scores, as you know them, are exactly the same. Previously, the University of Adelaide has never used well, not never, but to my knowledge, has not recently used Section 5 of the UCAT, and we've always made this very clear with students, although we've always encouraged them to do their best on every component of the exam. Moving forward, we now may use Section 5 of the UCAT, if required, at the lower end of the interview spectrum, in order to tie-break candidates who have an equal total score in all other sections of the UCAT. So our advice on that hasn't changed. We encourage students to do their best across all sections of the UCAT, but it is important to make them aware that where previously we weren't looking at Section 5 at all, Section 5 may now be considered by the university. In addition, interviews will move to a multiple mini interview style. You would be familiar with this probably in a lot of other areas as well. This will take the format of 6 stations of 10 minutes each. All interviews will now be held on Zoom. The faculty trialled this in 2021 and it was very successful, so we'll be moving towards this as a more permanent change. As usual, there are some differences in this application process when it comes to international students or students who are of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent. So please check the admissions guides or have a chat to us afterwards today to find out more about the specifics of that if you're supporting students in those situations. So it's important to note the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences doesn't just teach medicine, they teach a lot of other fantastic degrees, and we're really pleased that with the addition of our allied health specialisations last year, we now have kind of a well-rounded health experience at Adelaide where we've got nursing students working with physiotherapy students, working with medicine students to really feel what it's going to be like working in industry with all of those different colleagues in different areas. So soon we'll be excited to advise you of the date for our annual Health HQ event. And as usual, this is the best place for students to go to get advice, to meet academics, to meet students in the degrees that the Health and Medical Sciences faculty teaches, but also to tour our flagship Adelaide Health and Medical Sciences building. As you would all know, we have a lot of difficulty trying to bring school groups through that building because it is just absolutely chock-a-block with teaching all year round. But we do make a commitment every year to open it up during the Health HQ event, and we really encourage any of your students who are interested in studying with the faculty in any way to go and have a look at the amazing facilities that are available there. On to our Faculty of the Professions. Now this change came around about the middle of last year, so I'll certainly forgive you if you missed it. There was plenty going on. We're looking at we have now a new business structure in the Faculty of the Professions to really streamline those opportunities for students. So we now have 2 major areas that students can choose from if they're looking to pursue studies in business. We have our Bachelor in Business, which has majors in digital marketing and communications, international business, management, or any 2 of those. We also have our Bachelor of Commerce, which has majors in accounting, corporate finance, strategic marketing, or any 2 of the above. This structure allows flexibility for students to follow their passion and choose majors of interest to them. In the business degree, this has a practical focus and explores core business and management principles. The Commerce degree meets the needs of students wanting a specific professional accreditation with a strong focus on making graduates job ready in their chosen field. So for those of you who aren't aware of it, the Shark Tank eSchool program is currently running nationally for students in years 10 and 11. We certainly encourage you to get your school involved in this if you haven't seen it before. It's essentially a train the trainer model whereby we provide support and resources to teaching staff to roll out this program, which is all based around innovation and entrepreneurship to students in schools. And as you can see, there are a number of benefits for both students and teachers, not least of which being that on both ends there's a credit agreement with the Adelaide Business School. So students can get up to 3 units of undergraduate credit into an Adelaide Business School course at the University of Adelaide. But teachers can also get 3 units of postgraduate credit into the Master of Education that I mentioned earlier, or any masters in the Adelaide Business School. Our Future Leaders program has been running for a couple of years now, and this offers exclusive workshops for students in years 10, 11 and 12, focused around areas of the profession. So this is not just business, but also things like law. We've got a number of other specialisations under the business banner, and then also into things like law, economics, accounting, etc. You'll find all of these workshops in the outreach guide that hopefully all of you have received a copy of today, but you can also visit their website to get information about how that could work for your school. Last but not least, our Faculty of Sciences. And there are a few major changes for the Bachelor of Veterinary Bioscience to make you aware of today. So the major updates: in response to COVID-19, a temporary change to the domestic students admissions process is in place for the 2022 intake only. This change has resulted in the temporary removal of the interview component of the admissions process. Applicants will still be required to meet all other entry requirements, and every other part of the process as it is will stand. In addition to that, a permanent change has been made to the timing of domestic student questionnaires. Where traditionally these went out to students sometime around when they lodged their application, now we've streamlined the process so that all applicants will be given their login credentials for the questionnaire on the same date, shortly after the SATAC early closing date. The new questionnaire release and the due dates will be published in the 2022 admissions guide, which we will be finalising shortly, so we'll again make sure that we share that with you. Similarly to the Health HQ event, we really encourage students to check out the specialised facilities that are really involved in not only this degree, but also our veterinary technology degree and animal science and animal behaviour degree as well. So this year the faculty are offering specialised sessions both on campus and also over Zoom as well, so hopefully most students can access that. You can see the dates there on your screen, and we'll also have those up on our website by the end of next week. In addition, the faculty has also introduced 2 new package programs. So these are bundle versions of existing offerings that now include a guaranteed place in a research honours year. So for your students who've already identified at the point of high school that they're interested in a career in research and they want that guaranteed honours place, we'd encourage them to list this in their preferences. So the 2 options that we have here are the Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology and the Bachelor of Food and Nutrition Science, both with honours there, as you can see. It is important to note that students must maintain a minimum GPA of 4.5 in order to remain in these programs and progress through to honours. If they do dip below that, they will be counselled to transfer into the non-honours version of the bachelor's degree, and then of course they're welcome to apply for honours at the end, and we're certainly happy to support them through that process. The Bachelor of Applied Data Analytics is also a fairly new one for the faculty. And this one's a really great area because I think often we deal with a lot of students who have a real passion for mathematics, are really interested in how things work and numbers and things like that, but they struggle to see what the jobs are there for them. They struggle to see how they can actually apply that into the real world. So the beauty of applied data analytics means that students can get real experience about how they're actually going to utilise those skills in the workplace. As you can see, there's a choice of 7 different majors and specialisations. We have agriculture, bioinformatics, economics, environment, geosciences, physics and public health. So that's all for my university updates. Before we break, I would like to introduce you to my colleagues in the back of the room for networking, and we will ask that once again if you can perhaps just pop your things on your chair and get up for networking. So from the Faculty of Arts, we have Kate Rees. From the Faculty of Engineering Computer, hopefully these guys can maybe give a bit of a wave as I yell out their names. From the Faculty of Engineering, Computer and Mathematical Sciences, we've got Tom Brown. From the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, we have Brooke Blackburn. From the Faculty of Professions, we have Rena Carr. And from the Faculty of Sciences, we have Ari Trauke, who I'm sure many of you already know. And as I mentioned, Louise Mitchell, the Acting Director of Wilta-Yalu, has been kind enough to join us today. In addition, the entire domestic recruitment team will be standing at the back. We've got Jess Perry, Tia Malohis and Joel Driver on Zoom. And then we've also got Tony Duggan, myself, Kahlia Green, and Young A. Taylor wandering around as well. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I look forward to chatting to you during the networking session. Please come and speak to us. Thank you so much.